There you go.
And we're here. Well, hello, everybody. Welcome to Virtual Thursday's Dire Literary Series. And my guest today is frequent flyer, Michael Keith. And let's see if I can find, let me see if I can find his bio to show you all. He's got a very Virtual Thursday's Dire Literary Series. And my guest today, let me see if I can find his bio to show you all. That's just awesome. All right, there we go. That was me, by the way.
We figured that out.
All right, let's do this. There we go. Ta-da. So Michael's got a very long bio because he has written so many books that we're going to talk about. He's known for his memoir, best known initially. He wrote technical books for media, radio. His memoir came out in the early 2000s, but since then he's had many story collections of various lengths. And we're going to talk to him a little bit about a form that he invented. And so that'll be really cool to talk about. And you want to know more about him? His website is michaelckeith.com. Is that correct?
That sounds good.
Yeah. The all of the Zoom stuff blocks out the web addresses, so I just guessed. All right, and without anything else, let's turn this over to Michael.
Hey, thanks, Tim. Appreciate you having me for the umpteenth time. Too many times, probably. It's nice to be here with a lot of familiar faces, a lot of friends, and a lot of fellow writers who I've known for quite some time. So I'm taking myself into gallery so I can see everybody again instead of my mug on this screen. Uh, yeah, I think everybody here's a writer. I know DeWitt and John and Phil and Zvi and on and on and on. And certainly you, Tim, you've stacked up your numbers of books and whatnot. I think what I'll do is I'll read a few little, well, they're always little pieces from a forthcoming collection called Ping's New and Selected Nonoscopic Prose Poems. And then, hey, since we're all chum writers here, let's have a conversation. That would be, I think, enjoyable. So this first piece, excuse me, is called A Stop at Penn Station. The young woman traveling next to me on the train discovers the small bag she's placed under her seat is missing. She reports this to the conductor, who chides her for being foolish enough to place something of value beyond the reach of her eyes. This is New York, you know, he says. This is called Sophia's Choice. She had children who caught fire when they had too much sugar. She fell for a man who didn't want to become involved with a woman who had children. So she took her son and daughter to a bakery. This is called The Nostalgia of the Chronic Imbiber. Fred had the shakes and waited anxiously for the liquor store to open, which on Sunday wasn't until 11 a.m. He was tempted to take a shot from his bottle of aftershave, but the last time he did, he got sick and threw up. Old Spice just wasn't as good as Menin, he recalled, attempting to light the end of a cigarette butt with his trembling hand. This one's called God is Just. A meteor struck the Seabold's trailer and landed on Mary's abusive husband. It was at that exact moment she accepted the Lord as her savior. This is called Naked Brunch. William Lee had as many eggs at Original Henry's as his hollow belly would allow. He then went into the alley next to the restaurant and shot his pistol at the crumbled fedora of a vagrant's head. Bullseye, he bleated joyously as the man slumped to the ground. This is called Stigmata. She could not get the ink of the crucifix stamp off her hand. It had been a wonderful evening with her boyfriend at the St. Raymond's High School dance, but every time she caught sight of the cross on her hand, she trembled and was reminded of how Jesus had suffered for her sins. This is called Golden Years. I look at my elderly wife in bed and recall her at 30. She looks at me with equal disappointment. We avert our eyes and go through with it. This is called Lydia Takes a Stand. I can no longer get my favorite writer's new books through Amazon.com. Instead, I have to buy her latest title from an independent bookstore or bookshop.org, which also is her new publisher. She's protesting the giant cyber retailers' dominance in bookselling and is giving them the finger by taking her work elsewhere. I bet she's written a story about that in her new collection. This is called Foreseen. I intuit many things. I intuit almost everything. No, actually, not almost. I intuit everything. Oh, I know what you're thinking at this very moment as you read this, but I'm not delusional. I think that was the last piece I had here. I wanted to make it short so we could get into a tete-a-tete, a round robin, as it were.
Well, here we go.
Yay!
So Pings is opening,
Pings.
coming soon.
So I hear.
So have you written in that form before? And what is a ping?
I was afraid you'd ask me that. There's a lot of kind of ambiguity around a ping, a term I coined for what I do. If you can't really quite explain it, devise your own term, and then you can make it up. Really, what I've been doing for the last few years is prose poetry. I thought of it as just microfiction, but then people started calling it prose poetry. And I thought, well, that has kind of a nice ring to it. So I've been working in that form for quite a while. A prose poem or a ping, I think, has a vividness and a conciseness and a lyrical quality you don't find in standard prose. I don't know if you could say it elevates it. Maybe that would be a little smug to say that, but it's not prosaic. A ping is designed to ignite the soul in a very concise a number of words. Pings, the next book I have coming out, I draw on older stuff and new stuff, and I refer to them as nanoscopics, smaller than micros. Pings has stories that are one line long and no more than 4 lines, not sentences, lines.
Interesting. So so you might be working on something that's micro and be like suddenly like this is a ping, or do pings become micros?
Ooh, do pings become? Well, I hope micros become pings, because that's where I'm at. I guess a ping is a more rarefied version of a prose poem or a micro poem. It's something that has, I think, poetic aspects to it. There are poets here who could probably explain that better than I can.
So basically it's the form of the shape of it, the lines itself, that makes it not microfiction and more of a ping.
Well, no. It's
No,
kind
I'm
of
trying to
the reverse.
understand it.
It's kind of the reverse of that. If you're a micro would be from left margin to right margin, right? And poetry is not that. Poetry has breaks in it, and it can have all kinds of shapes and different structures to it. I think prose poetry is a hybrid form. It incorporates elements of both poetry and prose, and you know, it's what I call pings, for lack of a more inventive term. It's like a ping of radar. It's like something that you know, that pulls your attention in and alerts you to something, and shakes you up, you know, a little bit, and causes you to really mull over what the meaning is of what you're looking at. Hopefully you don't have to mull over it too long. Hopefully it's very direct. Hopefully it hits you as soon as you've read it.
So Chris Riley, I'm going to kind of incorporate his question in here. Is there a word limit to this type of work? For example, like 44 words in a quadrille or 144 in prosody. Do you have a strict limit to stay under?
Oh, okay. I thought you were asking Chris that.
Yeah.
You know, yeah, I never go beyond a short paragraph. Uh, uh, and it's a territory that I feel most comfortable in, and what I have to say generally almost fits those parameters. And I mean, years ago I was writing regular length short stories, 5, 8 pages, 10 pages, 14 pages, and over time they just kind of became shorter and shorter and shorter. So now, you know, my brain just thinks that way. My brain just thinks in essentially 2 lines.
So Robert Fleming has a question that addresses this completely. So when you're working with fiction or poetry less than 50 words, what are the elements of story you should include in that very small piece?
Just that, it should be a story. It should be obviously that it's conveyed a message. You know, it shouldn't be so abstract you scratch your head. If it's that abstract, make a poem out of it. You know. But and when I say story, that may be stretching it. You know, these are blips on the screen that say something and are gone as almost instantly. But invariably, I think everything that I do, if it's 1 line or if it's 2 lines or it's 5 lines, there is a story there.
What's the shortest story you ever told? Christopher Riley would like to know.
Probably 5 words.
Now, were you influenced by the Hemingway's famous 1-line short story?
I don't know if I was influenced, you know, by him. I like his economy. I like his conciseness. I like his determination to avoid flowery rhetoric and extravagant you know, narrative and dialogue and whatnot. But I don't know that if I was influenced by anybody a few years ago, I would say it was Lydia Davis and Charles Simic and a couple others. I kind of discovered that what I was doing, or what I was kind of leading up to doing, was something that they were doing. And then I became great fans and discovered that, you know, I was kind of a member of their flock, if you will. And it just felt comfortable to be there.
Those are all great influences. Now, I know that you've written academic books. So John Shire would like to know,
Oh, John.
does your academic background influence your writing now, your non-academic writing?
Well, that is a good question, because I know John's an academic too, so I could throw that question back at him. Because you know, and maybe together we can talk about that. Yeah, I mean, everything influences you. Everything that you write, if you write a textbook, it treats you discipline. It impresses you that you have to achieve something. You have to go somewhere. DeWitt certainly, as an academic, can answer that question as well. So I don't think, you know, for 20 years I wrote academic texts, some 25, solo and co-author, and I don't think they ruined me. I think of anything, I think of anything by the time I was done writing all those books, I so desperately needed fresh air and I needed to go someplace else. It kind of launched me. It kind of prodded me, get over there and do that. And probably like John and do it, you discovered that it was there all along. But, you know, if you're a teacher, especially if on the college level, it's publish or perish, and you just have to produce, you have to put out to keep your job, you know. So I don't know if that even comes close. What about you, John? What do you think about that?
We're going.
I agree a lot with what you're saying, especially that you sort of felt launched into the more creative aspects of writing after academic writing, because there are so many constraints on academic writing that you can throw off when you get into fiction or poetry or microfiction, and you can let it become what you want it to be and what the work wants to be itself. Academic writing just feels really constrained in so many ways, which is why I don't do it much anymore either.
I started off, excuse me, writing textbooks. Wrote quite a few textbooks and had a couple of very successful textbooks. And then, as John was saying, I was beginning to feel claustrophobic writing textbooks. So I started writing monographs, that is, scholarly books that focus on a particular theme or topic or issue. And I found I had more room to move around in. And could actually feel like I was a storyteller when I wrote about Native American broadcasting, when I wrote about hippie radio, and you know, so it was a breath of fresh air for me. And I guess all along I was moving in that direction, and moved right into the memoir, and managed to do that pretty well. And then after that, it just kind of naturally slipped into the short fiction writing. So maybe all of this was good preparatory, you know. And Tony Early said memoir is half fiction and half imagination. So it was halfway there when I was writing the memoir.
So when you jump into the short story, Lindsay wants to know, how do you write a short story? How do you write it now? And also, what books would you recommend to read to get ideas?
Well, I bet a few of us here could suggest things. What books do I read to get everything? You know, now what I do is read a lot of microfiction and short stories, and they're real catalysts. I used to be that after reading a short story, 2 or 3 page, I'd have an idea to you know, to maybe spin my own story. And now it's to the point in the last few years where I can open up a book of microfiction. The first word, literally the first word of the title, will just bam, it'll just set me off. And the best things are when they come down on paper in 3 minutes, 4 minutes. And even better is when they come down on paper and they're as close to right as you could possibly get them. You know, it's when you have to labor over a microfiction or prose poetry that you get in trouble. I don't think they're intended to be labored over, you know. I think they're impressionistic. I think they come out, and sure, you can tweak them and adjust them and whatnot. But the best ones for me have been almost instantaneous.
So let me test you here if this is fair. If you tell me, let me know if it's unfair. So when you said that, I grabbed a copy of my book of flash fictions and I turned to a random page. I'm going to give you the first word of the title.
Oh, God.
Come up with just a general outline where you might go with it. So the word is divided.
Oh, okay. Divided. Well, that conjures 100 different possibilities. You know, a divided nation, a divided house, a divided personality. You know, and that word would send me into one of those possible directions. So it doesn't have to be much. In fact, if you were to read me a whole sentence, I'd probably be in more trouble than just give me a word. Because with the word, I have the freedom to go anywhere. With a sentence, you've already insinuated yourself into that sentence. So I'm constrained by that.
So when you're in a good writing zone, can you just kind of walk around, take things in, look at words, and then you can very easily develop a story? And what happens if you're not in a good writing zone? Is it more difficult with that type of prompt, so to speak?
You know, I'm never not in a bad writing zone. I either decide, okay, I'm going to write something, and I write it. I write it. I might have 2 or 3 false starts, but you know, I write it. If I wake up in a good mood, if I wake up thinking, oh, let me just go there, let me go to that wonderland of fiction and whatnot, I can have a good day. I've written 8, 9, 10 in a day. But keep in mind, yes, they're they're micros, they're 1 or 2 lines long. So I can almost write at will, almost write at will. You know, it's not so much being in the right frame of mind. I guess it's just going with the feeling of the moment, going with whatever's happening around you. I don't know how many stories I've written just walking my dog. I bet that's happened to John, just walking down the street. Noticing that there's crows on the telephone wire, and she's indifferent to them. And out of that came the fact that she knows she can't reach them, so she doesn't pay any attention to them anymore. And that made a very nice 2-line micro, just like that.
Do the people in your life need to understand that, and that need for you to write? Do they need to understand that you might disappear for 6 to 8 hours?
Well, you know, I'm lucky in that I have a wife who's a painter. She's an artist. And right above my office is her studio. So she's up there about the same amount of time I'm down here. So that's not a problem. I could see where it might be a problem for other people, but it's never been. I mean, she has, she's kind of given me a jab or two sometimes by saying, well, how many pieces did you write today? You've been in there all day. She didn't realize that I was watching YouTube. My favorite pastime is watching writers of old and new interviewed on YouTube. So if you reduce it to the amount of time I spend writing, I don't spend much time writing. I just don't. I don't get up, have my coffee and hit my keyboard at 7 and work until noon, have 1 hour lunch and go back until 3 or 4. Never. I did that when I was writing the academic books, because they required that, because they required the research and the collation of research and the integration of research. And it just, when it's from your imagination, you just float around with it.
Have you recently had an idea or an inkling to want to write like a 5 to 10 page short story? When's the last time a longer piece of work kind of struck you?
Oh, gee, that's a good question. Probably 6, 7 years ago. I'd have to look at the books that are on the shelf here. This shelf, these are my books, and I have to go up there and look at the last one that has longer stories in it. But no, I don't have any. I believe I could do it. I just don't have a lot of interest in it. I've been just so seduced by the form, by the prose poetry and the ping opportunities and potential to think about other occasionally I do. Okay, I get a lot from my good friends saying when I'll be moaning about, I'm trying to find a publisher and I'm tired of da 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 da. They'll say, or I'm just tired of writing. They'll say, well, why don't you write a novel? As if that's the panacea. I don't see it that way. You know, write a novel. There's 100 trillion novels out there. You know, what draws me into it? You've got to want to do it. You've got to be drawn to it, you know. And then some people like DeWitt. He writes all sorts of, he writes essays and poetry and stories and whatnot. I just don't have that broad range of intellect to take that stuff on. I park myself in this where I have plenty of space to back up and move forward.
So Pings is coming out soon. What else do you have coming down the road? Another 3 or 4 books, and how many manuscripts do you have in queue?
Well, I have Pings at Pierian Springs Press. I see Kurt's here. Hey, Kurt, how you doing? And that's my focus right now. I mean, that's kind of my capstone. It really incorporates what I feel are my best pieces of prose poetry and my most recent over the last year or two. So that's where my enthusiasm and focus is focused. Now, I do have a few other manuscripts in various queues, but I'm waiting on Pings, and then after it, a few months after it, I have a book with Mad Hat, our old friend Mark Vincennes, again a book of microfiction, and I have 2 manuscripts I haven't even thought about sending out. They're done. They sit there. I just don't want to cluster things up too much.
Well, it was amazing having you on, and it's always wonderful to talk to you. So michaelckeith.com, you want more information, go to that webpage often because there's always a new book. His previous book did very, very well, The Loneliness Channel, so check that out as well. And if you're watching the stream on Facebook, I figured it out. There's a I posted it on my personal page, and then there was a share button. I said, maybe I can share it to the group, and voila, it's shared to the group. So I guess that's how we do it now. So, but if you're watching it on the stream, use the Zoom link and come on in for the open mic. There's a lot of people here tonight to see Michael and to celebrate, and it's great having you.
Thank you again. I really appreciate the time you've given me over the last 20 years. As a matter of fact, this may be our 8th or 10th Zoom, or when you had the live in person, many of those.
Always enjoyable. Thank you.